Death Holler is a horror cast created by two true horror fans to bring to the table your favorite horror films. Topics include, but are not limited to, historical horror, gore, the occult, and terror. Listener discretion is advised.
You lost the two little dark souls that you had finally collected. What your children? What happened with that?
That was embarrassing. Llareyna does not lose children once she gets her hold on them. But we were at, obviously, Universal Studios Hollywood Horror Nights, which was my first time going to that, and I had so much fun. I mean, aside from the one thing that sucked was you have to wear masks everywhere, outside, inside, only in the park though. But if you're at Universal Walk, which is the area, we have a city walk right outside. I don't know if you guys have something like that.
Yeah, they have one
Universal.
down there. Yeah, they have it in Orlando that way.
You don't have to wear a mask outside. But once you get into the park, the magical barrier disappears and you can get COVID whether you're outside or inside.
That's just weird.
So, yes. So, aside from that, we went into every single, haunted attraction that they had. And the one I was the most excited for was it wasn't exactly how I pictured it, but it was mostly how I pictured it. We were shuttled in these tour buses that we have at Universal Studios. And while you're on the bus, they're playing clips of what's going on, and there's this lady that's holding a baby, and she's crying like, hey, don't go to this party because we're going to go to this purge party. And she's like, don't go, they're lying to you, they're killing us all. It's the forever purge. Excuse me as I'm getting choked up about it. It was so amazing. So we're like, okay. And she's like, please help us. You got to help us. And we stop at this area and she's like screaming, help me, help me. And everything goes black. And she's like the lights go back on and she's wearing a purge mask. And she's like, help me kill everyone. So she's one of them. She throws the baby to the ground that she was holding, which was obviously not a real baby. For any sensitive folks out there, I don't know why you're on this podcast. And all these people start attacking the tour bus, which was so amazing. So we get out of the tour bus and my kids bolt. One was bolting because she wanted to help with the purge.
Wow.
The little devil. And the other one was running because he was terrified for his life, legitimately terrified. And we lost them. I lost the little one for looking at the video that I posted, it was just a second, but it felt like forever. And more than anything, we were being pushed away from them because if you've seen the video, you saw me getting attacked by one of the purge characters, which was fun. And then my camera just kind of does its own thing because at this point I'm like, oh, no, I'm getting separated from my children. Those are my souls. You can't have them. And I didn't even know where the boy was. I couldn't see him. Fortunately, apparently the Hubs and I were on the right path. I had my eyes on the daughter. He had his eyes on the boy. I don't know if he ever lost sight of him. I literally had to punch through a crowd of people, reach my hand between this couple that was holding hands, and yank my daughter through them to get her back. And she thought she was in trouble. I was like, no, you're fine. People are pushing me away from you. And they were mad for a second until they realized, holy crap, she lost her kids,
Yeah.
It made the experience that much funner.
Yeah, I can I only imagine how scary that would be, but at the same time, it perfectly encapsulates what you would want in that particular haunt.
Yes. Now, the rest of the purge was pretty much what you see in the movies. A lot of, it felt like it was making fun of a lot of what you would consider a right-winged person in the media where there was a lot of that. You won't take our freedom, spelled horribly, things like that. And I was like, okay, is this what we're doing? Like, it just was that over and over. And I was like, The Purge is better than just that. Why do, those have to be the only bad people? They had some amazing characters dressed up, jumping at people. They had, I have to post photos, but in Universal Studios Hollywood, they have not legitimate, plane crash, but they have this huge plane just ripped apart. It looks like it's crashed. They had dead bodies hanging out of it. They've always kind of had that. It's part of the tour you get. When you take these tour buses, you normally drive through. This was us walking through, only they had characters from The Purge just wreaking havoc. It was by far my favorite. But I'm going to kind of move on from that one because I saw so much more. I did go into Halloween 4, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Exorcist, The Haunting of Hill House, Pandora's Box, Bride of Frankenstein. And they were all really good. They were very well done. And I know you and I had different houses, and you remember a lot more details. You went into Bride of Frankenstein, and I didn't remember at the end that they were together. I had only seen where she was basically, I don't know if she killed him and reanimated him for a specific reason.
No,
but Hubs agrees with you. She was reanimated, or he was reanimated at the end by her.
What they were basing it on was the end of the Bride of Frankenstein movie, that, the old one, the black and white one, where he, Frankenstein gets upset because when she first sees him, she screams and she basically rejects him. And the whole movie he just wants a mate because he's, by himself. And whenever she rejects him, that's whenever he tells, Dr. Frankenstein and who I don't remember, there's somebody else there, but he tells them to go, that, that's better for those two to be dead than, for him to live in, loneliness for the rest of his life, or, however long he's gone, because, he's animated, so he might live forever. So he pulls like this switch or starts like destroying like the electrical equipment. It causes this huge explosion, which that's how the movie ends. But this starts out, whenever, at least in Orlando, you walked in and you saw like projected on a screen through kind of like you could see it through, like there was a castle wall and there was like broken like bricks that were taken out of it. And you could see projected that final scene where everything exploded. And then the next scene was the bride had lived, and, for whatever reason, she changed her mind because Frankenstein was the only one killed in the explosion, and she was trying her best to, like, lift this, like, big stone pillar or whatever off of his body, and she was like, and she would scream at you as you walk by, in her agony or whatever, and then and the whole thing is like her trying to, she's, she wants her mate now, so she's trying to bring him back, and, she's trying to use the blood of Dracula's brides, to reanimate him, is the, the gist of it.
Oh my God. And, I missed so many details. I feel like I do need to go into these attractions more than once.
Oh,
even though our Fast Pass was only good. Yeah. And I'm terrible with details, but I legitimately get so terrified in these attractions that, it's not that I close my eyes. I think I only remember just the scary parts. I don't remember the fun details. Which was weird because I had told you about the last time I had been into the Walking Dead attraction. I remembered details, but I didn't quite remember the zombies. I knew that they were there because I had my eyes closed so tightly. I was so scared. This time I kept my eyes open, and I'm glad I did, but I'm also bittersweet about it because they didn't do a great job with the zombies' makeup and costumes.
Oh,
and they looked, in my opinion, a little cheap. So the mask looked like these cheap. I have a zombie mask that we bought from the Dollar Tree many moons ago, and I like to paste it against people's windows at work to scare them, which has worked a few times. I'm so proud of myself. And it kind of looked like that. It's a really horribly done mask. Gets the point across of a ripped off face, almost in a zombie-like way. But they looked really horrible, and I was like, oh, okay. But I did keep my eyes open for the other ones. I was a good girl this time. I just got scared a lot.
I think you brought this up whenever we was talking about offline. The thing about Universal, though, is their production quality. It's not necessarily the scariness, at least to people who are used to that sort of thing. In fact, a lot of people who are, are going for the first time, but like are seeking the scare factor, and that's kind of like they're thrill junkies in that sense, tend to be disappointed a little bit with Universal. Not because, like I said, not the production's off the, the charts, but it's always like, they go and they're like, well, it's a little bit tame versus some of the others because they don't allow the, the scare actors to touch you or, to get.
Oh, they were touching though, by accident, but they were touching.
Yeah, well, I mean, it happens by accident, but I mean, like they don't grab you or anything like some of the other haunts where they have you sign waivers and all that stuff. So some people, it's one of those ones that like, once you get used to the quality of it, it's hard to go back to just like the local haunts where, you have unfortunately what you had with the, Walking Dead, where you can tell it's just like store-bought Spirit Halloween mask or whatever. But at the same time, it's one of those things where, it can ease some people into the, the haunted house thing that wouldn't normally do it because there's less of a barrier there, to kind of get into it, less scare factor, as it were.
Absolutely. If you want to start off, it's still scary because you're like, I don't know, the thrill is still there for true scaredy cats like myself. Like go for it. Just do it. If you want to get into that, I've been into a lot of scary, haunted attractions, if you will. And Universal does do a great job. I'm going to throw this out here, that I feel like the mainstream ones, the Halloween 4, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the Exorcist, which they did a really good job with Exorcist, and Haunting of Hill House. I think the Exorcist and Haunting of Hill House were the most scary, if you're going to say they're scary. So on the scare factor, they're up there. But really, the non-commercial ones, like Pandora's Box and... oh my God, there was another one that we went through. I completely forgot the name, but those were actually scarier and very well put together. So I don't know. I liked those, but if you really, really want to get your kicks in the thrills and the scares department, it's got to be for California, Knott's Scary Farm, which it's Knott's Berry Farm, but they turn into Knott's Scary Farm, which is amazing. It was way too packed. We did not have any fast passes. And, so we only were able to make it through 2 or 3 attractions. They were amazing in terms of how they, put the homes together, the attractions together, to the actors literally hanging off of harnesses and flying down and like grabbing people, but not like maybe it was a quick grab on the shoulder, just enough to make you think it was an accident, but they were intending on doing that to scare you. They had a witch one. And they had a circus one, which I feel like the scary circus theme seems to be, in the past 2-3 years, seems to be a big thing lately.
Yeah, that's one of the staples that they seem to go to in a lot of these houses.
They did really good. They had actors that were very, what's the word, limber, that could contort in all kinds of different ways. They had like TV screens all over with all these different screaming spirits, trying to break through, which looked amazing. They went all out, and I was like, how much money in comparison to Universal Studios did they spend on their attractions? Because theirs, in my opinion, by far were greater.
The one thing that has to be said, just as devil's advocate on this, is, and I totally agree with you that sounds amazing, is that I've heard Knott's Scary Farm tends to repeat a lot of their houses, and they refine them as they go along, which, that makes a world of difference, because a lot of people don't realize Universal, like, even if they reuse props, which they do from like previous attractions, they make it's almost like chalk, drawings or chalk art. It's like it's there and then it's gone. Like, so they build everything up from scratch, and then it's tore down, and like they salvage what they can. And you never see that. They've only done like the same haunted house like maybe once or twice. And I think that was like American Werewolf in London was perhaps one of them. And and it wasn't even the same exact one. It might have been Poltergeist, but like they literally build theirs up every year. So they're refining theirs as the season goes along. And everybody says that if you go early in September versus late in October, it's a totally different experience. Knott's keeps theirs up, and they're like, okay, that worked, that didn't. Let's change this. So they have the benefit to their houses of, they reuse the same ones, but they work on, the scare factor that way,
Okay, and you know what? I'll be able to for sure report on that next year, because we're definitely going back to Knott's. The Hubs didn't have as great a time at Universal, which I'm like, well, that's tough because I want to go again. I loved it. All of them were busy no matter where you went. They were all busy. So, it was one of those hurry up and wait. We just need to commit to the fast passes.
Oh yeah, it's sad, but that's kind of the only way that you can really, especially if you're not going for multiple nights. But yeah, the not scary. I've heard that they maybe change a house or two out, but they tend to keep. But definitely, report back on that and let me know if that's the case or not.
Will do. I will say that going through Haunting of Hill House, that attraction finally prompted me to watch the show, because I saw a lot of things in this house. They did an amazing job. The actresses they hired looked like, I'm only 3 episodes in right now, so it looked like one of the woman spirits of the house. And I don't want to really, I guess, so I'm way behind more than anyone, so I really would be spoiling more myself than anything if no one has seen it. But the actresses they hired to be the spirit, they all looked just like the one in the house that I've seen a few times. And they really it was just a carbon copy, legitimate, of going through the show and going through this attraction so far. So now that I've gone through the attraction and I'm starting to watch the show, I'm very impressed on what they put, the production behind it, basically. They did a really good job.
Yeah, and I know they did a difference between that one and the one in Orlando, but both of them, they just knocked it out of the park. I mean, they even, I don't know if they did the same thing in Hollywood, but they actually recreated the entire front of Hill House, as you were entering into the haunted house, in Orlando. They rebuilt, or they built up, it wasn't the size, obviously, but they recreated Hill House, and you walked into the front door of it.
I don't remember the front, but I know walking in, it looked like you were walking into the house. And there was nothing, you were walking. I think that was the scariest part, is because I expected at first to immediately, because there was a staircase, and I was like, oh, we're going to get jump scared right here. And we didn't. So for the first, 30 seconds of the walkthrough, there were no scares. So I think that built up the intensity more than anything, because you're really psyching yourself out,
I could see that being that case. It could have also been a situation, though, where you missed maybe a preliminary scare where that stair was at. Sometimes that happens. If they're, if you're in between, them changing, or resetting for their, the next, time. Because Universal does theirs to where that scare actors don't actually scream or do any of the speaking. It's all through recording, so they're the scare actors save their voice.
Oh,
and so
that makes sense.
And so where it's timed that way, if somebody else caught the scream as it was coming in, and it's set on a 30-second loop, you might have missed that initial when you walked in the door.
Yeah, and I did notice that. What I liked the most about Universal Studios and Not Scary Farm is they do not hold off on the kids. They go for it. And I'm like, thank you. This is what we brought them for. You terrorize these little shits.
Well, it sounds like we've got someone at the door, so cue the music.
I'll cue the music.
Hello and welcome back to Death Holler for the final installment of The Devil's in the Details. I'm your host, the Reverend Dr. Death, and joining me as always is a spirit so dark and foul that even John Constantine fears her, Llareyna. What deals are you making tonight, Llareyna?
goodness gracious. I don't get to make the deals like the devil. I just have to steal. I have to snatch those souls, there's no deal making on my end.
Yeah, you can't just go to a crossroads and expect it to happen. You got to actually get out there and do the work.
Yeah, it's a hard job. Somebody has to do it, and I'm, glad it's me.
And you get all those truant kids off the street, so we all appreciate the effort you put in on that.
Yeah, we call them little street rats, just like Aladdin.
Well, as I just mentioned, the episode wraps the first season of Death Holler, and we're going out with a double feature. Our first offering is the 1941 classic The Devil and Daniel Webster, about a Faustian deal gone wrong, as usual. And we conclude everything with a 2005 DC Vertigo-inspired film, Constantine, starring Death Holler alum Keanu Reeves. To give each film its due and to prevent Llareyna from having to spend forever in purgatory editing this damn thing, we will not be doing an Attack of the Bees or a banner segment, well, outside of one little mention. And so buckle up and get ready. Before we get into all that, though, just the regular podcast plug, like, subscribe, and leave a comment and help our podcast grow. Now, one thing I wanted to mention, and that's all the banter I'm going to do for this episode, is that I did watch Halloween Kills, and I recently watched a movie called The Medium on Shudder, and I would give both of those movies 4s. I know there's a lot of split reactions to Halloween Kills from the audience, and it seems like it's pretty standard that if you appreciated or liked the original sequels that came along, 4, 5, and 6, then you probably are going to hate the new movie. I, however, have only ever liked the first movie, and 3 because it's weird, and Michael Myers has been probably one of those movie villains that's my insomnia treatment, because he always puts me to sleep in the second act, and I can tell you for a fact that the Halloween Kills does not do that. This motherfucker is going to town like Jason in this movie. Whether you like that or not, it's when they say Halloween Kills, he kills through the whole thing. So that's so
amazing. I have not seen it yet. The children have, and thankfully my son is not he doesn't give away spoilers. He's very good, but he was watching, and he had to have been watching a death scene. I mean, it sounds like that was almost the entire movie, and all I heard was oh dang, and I was like, oh, this is good. I'm gonna like this.
There is one part in the, I liked several of the kills in this, which is always a sign of a good slasher, but there's a scene with this elderly couple, probably in the midway point of the movie, where they do some things in that were, I was just like, that's pretty inventive. I've not seen that yet. So, and even people who hate the movie tend to appreciate that scene. So that I'm good on them for, up in the, the I don't know, just the menace factor to Michael Myers. I know some people say that that's not needed, but I mean, it just depends on what your view is. I mean, for me, it worked. And I've had a conversation with Fred from the Scooby Gang, and he's right there with me. He said, bring on the third movie. This Halloween Kills was, right up his alley.
Oh my God. We have it. So I have to, I need to watch it, because obviously I'm watching other things right now, but after hearing my son's reactions, and I've actually been reading online, I haven't had any spoilers. People are very gracious. Thank you. Even though I don't mind spoilers, obviously, that. But from what I've heard, the people that don't like it, the things that they've been saying sound like reasons why I would like it. And I'm like, okay, well, I can appreciate how you feel about it, but you're making me want to watch this more.
Well, here's the thing. It doesn't stand, like the plot, I'll agree with some of the detractors. The plot probably doesn't stand up to extreme scrutiny, but what slasher really does? Honestly, even if you go back to the original movie, just the fact that they, even at the end of the movie, like they shoot him and he doesn't die. Like he gets back up. There's a lot of if you want to nitpick, you can nitpick every single slasher in existence. And, I've heard the guys on Red Letter Media, they trounced it because they liked the original movies or, were overly critical about the plot. And then I heard, the Dead Pit guys, they were, going on about how they didn't like it, which I thought was funny with the Dead Pit guys because I've seen them defend a movie called Spookies, and that's probably the most retarded movie that I've ever seen in my life. So I don't understand why do you nitpick the plot of this versus some of these other movies? I mean, it's just a popcorn film. That's what I went into it expecting, and that's what I got. So I mean, it worked for me.
Yeah, you know what the thing is? I feel like with the guys that you're talking about that are nitpicking, I feel like you're not supposed to like the mainstream films. You're supposed to, I think, when it comes to a horror podcast or a horror cast, I said that horribly, a horror cast, if I enunciated that correctly.
That's all right.
I think the thing about it is that we're supposed to really kind of like the cheesy B film type movies. And there was once upon a time, more or less back in the 80s, when slasher films were mostly that vibe, even if they were higher production films. But now with this, high dollar films, for some reason we're supposed to snub these. It's like a thing, It's almost like, hey, you're part of this group, but you can't sit with us because too much money was spent making you. I don't know. I feel like that's a thing, and that's what I'm wondering is the cause for these guys to basically give this film the attention that they did versus how they felt about other, type of films that you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't understand it. I mean, it's there's certain films that if you, okay, so my perfect example of this would be, because of my recommendation, 4.5, I would almost probably say a 5 at this point, just now that I've had time to marinate on it. Midnight Mass. Perfect.
God, I need to see that.
Perfect. Story structure. It was well thought out. Like it was, like the plot's there, story writing. If you want to go into, yes, I appreciate that more for the overall like package of what it does. It's not really scary to me, but a lot of these movies are not because I'm dead inside now. But, it's one of those things where, I don't take a film like that and compare it to Halloween Kills. Because a slasher is not, to me, something that needs to have like the most complicated plot. It doesn't need to. You can do things with the genre where you can make it smart. Don't get me wrong, but that's not that's not a requirement for me to enjoy myself during a slasher. If you want to go into it like Scream and make a meta comment, that's cool. That's a new twist. But if you just want to throw the kills in there and just, have a fun roller coaster ride with it, that's what a slasher is to me. So when I go into one, I don't sit there and like, oh, well, he really wouldn't have been there because he only walks like, 2 feet, every, whatever. So there's no way that Michael could catch up with this person that's running at full bore, or whatever stupid thing, like you could sit there and just totally, do that with any of these slashers because they're really dumb whenever it comes to the plot. It's just like, bad guy kills for, revenge, or bad guy kills because he's a pedophile in the case of, Freddy or whatever. But it's not, it's not a requirement to me to have a good plot in those movies because they generally, they're just there for the, just the fun of watching the slasher go about his business, really.
Yeah. So do you think they're setting up some kind of expectation, like there's going to be this amazing storyline? You think that they're wanting some kind of redemption for these characters? I know that's a big thing lately. Like, give Michael Myers a redemption. Not specifically Michael Myers, but villains in particular.
I don't think in this case it is. I think they were going, and I don't know where they come up with this at. 2018, Halloween 2018 is a movie that upon initial viewing, I was kind of meh on, to be perfectly honest. I was like, I like parts of it, but then again, it doesn't really, it had that same kind of problem in a sense with me where I was kind of like in the middle. I'm like, okay, it's Michael Myers. He's kind of stalking through the bushes again. Here we go. And the funny thing is, and I mentioned this to Fred, in the Scooby chat, that, I actually appreciate Halloween 2018 more because this movie gives more background to that one and actually fills in some of the gaps. And there's like characters that actually, like you saw minor characters in the background of 2018 that get kind of like a little bit more, prominence in this one. and I appreciate the world building they're doing more because of that. But I mean, like, but all these people that hate Halloween Kills, they tend to like 2018 more, and because I guess they focus more on like the pain and trauma that Jamie Lee Curtis's character Laurie Strode went through, and I appreciate that. But the same people who hate that aspect are trouncing all over like one aspect of the Halloween Kills, which is the fact that there's other people in the community that were adversely affected by Michael Myers back in 78 or whenever he was supposed to have killed the babysitters. And I like the aspect that they're building up where it's not just like the final girl that was traumatized, but it's the whole community that was traumatized by what he did, and it kind of spurs them into doing things that or a lot of people are giving them shit over. It's like, well, why would the community be basically turned into a mob? Spoiler alert, but they that's kind of what the movie's about. And I'm just kind of like, well, I mean, if I like that aspect of where they're building up that PTSD and some of that trauma can actually I mean, for better or worse, can galvanize people into doing terrible things like that just because they, they're it's not just the final girl that had to deal with the loss of their family. There's other people in that community that were hurt by this.
Yeah, big time.
And it's like
he took many lives.
And well, I mean, that's what the Red Letter guys, Red Letter Media were complaining about. It's like, well, he really only killed 3 people in the original movie, but I'm just like, that expands out. I mean, you get the people who were traumatized by that. I mean, they're, it kind of expands from that, and it just takes a few people who are, really, tore up and that sort of thing to kind of get other people under their, into their mania, basically. And I kind of think that's what David Gordon Green was kind of trying to communicate as a director, that, and it's a meta comment about, what the lives we're living in 2021 or 2020 at the very least. But I mean, it only takes a few hurt people to get other people to join into their, their mob mentality. And I don't understand. And a lot of people are like throwing that out there. It's like, well, I don't, this doesn't make any sense. This is unrealistic. I'm like, I even posted on a forum on Facebook. I'm like, you all have never worked with the public. Do a retail job and see how easy see how people are. I mean, you'll truly see that people are just on the razor's edge of going psycho, and they just need that little bit of a match on the gasoline to kind of join in.
Oh my God, it's so true. I'm gonna throw in real quick. I've unplugged my laptop because I don't want. We're in the middle of a huge storm out here in California, which probably would be very mediocre coming from where you guys are in. It's like a sprinkle of rain. I'm just kidding. No, it's an awesome storm. I love when it storms out here. I'm a weirdo like that. And the lights are starting to go out in my house, and it is creepy as fuck in my dark studio. So you hear me scream, you just need to know something probably happened. In terms of, but yeah, I won't lose power on my computer, so.
Good mood setter then.
It really is, yes. While you're talking about Halloween, I'm like, ooh, no, not right now, Michael. I'm recording.
In the interest that we can get all the rest of this done, I'm just going to move on real quick to The Medium.
Yeah, I want to hear about
the movie
that.
I mentioned on Shudder. It's a documentary style film, which, if you want to nitpick that, how did they get the footage, after the events of the movie, whatever, Blair Witch effect, it's that sort of thing. Somebody found it or whatever. But anyways, the documentary filmmakers are doing a found footage type film where they're trying to investigate shamans and like how they come about their power and all this. And it's set in Thailand, and it's kind of like, I mean, it's a foreign film with subtitles, and they've met this one particular shaman who, and I can't remember the goddess's name, but it's like Bao Yan or something like that. That she's supposed to be like this goddess protector of the village, and this shaman is possessed basically by her spirit, and she treats the people in the village for their everyday like their spiritual sicknesses. There's a good little line in the movie where she mentions, she's like, if you come to me and you got some kind of problem that needs to go to a doctor, you're going to a doctor. I can't treat your physical pains, but if it's spiritual in nature, through her power, I can, treat you. And so they start out and they talk about in the movie, it's in their religion, I guess it is, all creatures have spirits. I mean, whether that's plants, animals, bugs, everything. So that kind of sets up some things for later. But they also mention in the movie that it's she's basically she got her power because her family line is there's somebody in her family that's always chosen for some reason, and it was originally went to her sister, but her sister rejected it, the goddess's blessing of possessing her, and turned to Christianity actually, and so it fell to her sister, who became the shaman, and now. For some, it seems that the shaman's niece, the original ladies who was supposed to be, the shaman that rejected it. It's her daughter. She is actually experiencing the symptoms now of becoming a shaman. So they swap, after they realize this, to kind of following her and kind of her, introduction into the shaman or life or whatever, and things go badly because, it's in the movie, but basically, if you're, the gist of it is her body is an open receptor to, whatever spirit's trying to manifest itself in her. And her mother goes out of her way to kind of reject that goddess, that good goddess that protects the village. So that opens her up. And another thing that happens in the movie opens her up to other things taking over because she's just receptive to that kind of thing, and it becomes basically like a possession type film from then on, and it's great. I mean, it for what it is and the way they filmed it and just some of the scenes. I mean, they're pretty unnerving.
Well, it sounds like it wasn't a case of her body, her choice, because it sounds like come one, come all.
You wouldn't be wrong in that.
Oh,
it's actually the come one, come all line is actually fairly accurate for what happens later on. But it, when I, in Christianity, legion, means many, demons or whatever. She's legion times 1,000, if you want to think of it that way.
Oh,
so she becomes very, very scary at one point in the movie. There's only one thing that I would say is it's most horrified I've been watching a movie, not because some of the other things they've done, because, as a horror fan, you get used to this stuff, but there is a major raggy in that, and that's our code word for, animal, specifically a pet dying. It is the roughest thing I've ever seen put to film. Like, they went out there with it. I mean, outside of maybe, Cannibal Holocaust, where they actually killed animals, which, I think caused, the studios to, stop that from then on. This is probably the most horrific thing I've seen put to film when it comes to a pet. So just be aware of that. If you're, if you really, are tore up about that sort of thing, it makes the little doggy scene and Needful Things look like, just basically something out of a children's, or book or something like that. It's way more intense than that.
Llareyna supports the murder and the killing and the capturing of children. She does not support killing the animals. You leave the animals alone. I don't care if it's a cow. I don't care if it's a cat. I don't care if it's a little mouse. You don't touch them.
Well, they prepare you for that fact in the movie because the woman that it happens to, because the woman whose pet it is that it happens to, actually serves dogs as a food source to people. It's considered illegal, but she still kind of does it because of tradition in Thailand. So just throwing it out there that different cultures, different beliefs.
Yes, at least they. That's the hardest thing, is that there has to be, like, we eat animals constantly, obviously, but you can't get mad at people that eat animals just because it's animals you choose to keep as pets. And that for me is so hard, but there's definitely a respect to that. Like, you got to get it, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't like it, but you just got to step back and be like, okay, just don't touch my dog.
But definitely check it out if you've got Shudder. Somebody made the joke that on one of those horror forums that I'm part of on Facebook that it should be called Mink, and that's the name of the niece in the movie. And I don't disagree, because most of the movie is people going, Mink, Mink, where Mink, where Mink.
Oh my God, one of those.
Yeah, but it's really good. So, but in the interest of time, moving forward, let's get to our first movie. This one is The Devil and Daniel Webster.
If you enjoyed this episode at the beginning of the end of Season 1, The Devil's in the Details of Death Holler, please look forward to our next episode where we continue the review of The Devil and Daniel Webster. Death Holler is brought to you by Los Diablos Blancos Network, with your host, the Reverend Dr. Death and Llareyna. Please like, subscribe, follow, and share. We'll catch you next time. And don't forget to bring your death certificate.